punch cards and
We're on. We can.
That's right, let's keep talking.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Big crowd tonight here, so welcome everybody to the April 25th, 2023 meeting of the Saline County Planning and Zoning Department. The first item will be the consent of the agenda. Item A, approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the agenda as printed.
I'll second the motion.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for the April 25th, 2023 meeting as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item B, approval of the minutes of the March 28th, 2023 meeting. Is there any discussion on the prior year minutes? If there are none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we approve the minutes from March 2023.
A second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the March 28th, 2023 meeting as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2, staff zoning regulation update.
This is a staff-initiated review of Section 3.07 dealing with building rights and lot split administrative procedures for the zoning regulations. Review of the zoning regulations is required as per the implementation goals outlined in the recently adopted comprehensive plan. Staff has chosen 3.07 of the zoning code to address first due to concerns that the current language regarding how building rights are assigned has not been consistently enforced in the past, causing issues with implementation of this policy, originally adopted back in 1978. The following is kind of a brief explanation of how this policy has evolved over the past 45 years, ending with the current language enforced in the zoning regulations. This is followed by staff's findings on enforcement issues, along with a request for clarification moving forward. As far as the policy, in an effort to preserve the most viable agricultural land and prevent residential overdevelopment in those areas, Saline County adopted the policy on building right assignments in 1978. This policy established original parcels, those parcels legally in effect at the time of adoption of the policy. Currently, parcels created after 1978 are classified as existing secondary parcels. As far as the original parcels, to kind of give you an idea, from 1979 to 2003, all the original parcels were recorded on hard copy files referenced by staff. So if you go to our office, in the zoning office there's an entire filing cabinet full of the original parcels, going every section, every parcel from every section that was existed in 1978, and that's what staff referenced for determining what was an original parcel and what was not. In 2003, our GIS mapping department produced concise aerial maps of Saline County, which staff used to distinguish the original 1978 parcels from those non-original secondary parcels recorded since then. So they had a whole separate layer that showed, defined where those original parcels were that I used to refer to in the filing cabinet. Those parcels were all now put on a separate layer on our GIS layer electronically. In 2006, the GIS department created data layers depicting original parcels and building right assignments to each parcel to assist staff in determining the correct number of rights without having to refer to the aerial photographs or parcel files. As far as the enforcement end of it, prior to 2007, there was no reference to secondary parcels, and original parcels were eligible for residential split had to be a minimum of 6 acres to create 2 3-acre parcels assumed to have 1 building right each. There was also no explicit reference to building rights except as they applied to TDRs. In 2007, this section was amended to establish 1 split or 1 building right for every 80 acres. Original parcels, those were the ones that I was explaining prior to 78 or up to that point of 78. Original parcels were allowed 1 building right per 80 acres plus 1 additional building right. And the way that we've interpreted that is you take a quarter section of ground, which is 160 acres approximately. They're allowed 2 building rights, and then you add 1 more building right to that, and that's the 3 building rights that they're assigned for that. The existing secondary parcels, those are parcels created since 1978. Staff has been interpreting are allowed only 1 building right for every 80 acres. So original parcels, and this is where I'm going to need a clarification, from you all. When we start getting into the less than 80 acres, there starts to get interesting situations that I've been running into with this and trying to enforce it. So this language, though, of the 1 split for every 80 acres plus 1 has been readopted twice since a zoning amendment was conducted back in 2015. So there's one in 2015, it was readopted, and then in 2017 it was readopted again under the current regs under I think it was 18. So we had like almost 2 or 3 times it's since 2015 that it's been readopted, that policy. Under the findings, based on the current wording of section 3.07, staff interprets this section to mean, in theory, each quarter section receives 3 building rights, 1 right for every 80 acres plus 1. There are currently several quarter sections that contained more than 3 splits at the time the policy was adopted. So you had maybe like 4 splits on 1 quarter section. And at that time, based on the building rights layer of the GIS system, the original parcels within these quarter sections of less than 80 acres were assigned 2 building rights each. So that meaning if it was less than 80 acres, they were allowed, this is my interpretation, 1 building right plus the 1. They couldn't have, because they were less than 80, all original parcels were granted 1 building right, and the way they talk about it is it's 1 building right plus 1 for if it's less than 80, and if it's 80 acres or more, it's 1 for every 80 acres plus that 1 additional. While the existing secondary parcels less than 80 are 1 building right, that means the existing secondary parcels, those split off since 1978, are only assigned 1 building right, not the plus 1. That's how I'm interpreting it. It appears that due to possible misinterpretation of these provisions in the past, several parcels were assigned more than their allowed share of building rights. There also appears to be some property line adjustments that were made over the years that were not approved by planning and zoning, and this has caused some parcels of less than 80 acres created after 1978 to have more than 1 building right each. So the interpretation going forward, I'm seeking clarification from the commission on just basically 3 areas. Am I correct in assuming that all original parcels, including those less than 80 acres, be allowed 1 additional building right, the plus 1 rule, meaning those that were created 78 and before, that allowed 1 for every acre plus 1, and that includes the one that's less than 80 acres. They have 1 building right plus an additional building right, and that's where I need the clarification. should all parcels less than 80 acres be allowed one development right transfer before requiring an ag deed restriction? Or should this only apply to those parcels created after 1978? Because in theory, if you have the original parcels that are less than 80 acres that have one building right assigned plus another building right, technically that counts for the additional building right that they would have transferred for those that were split off since 1978 that are only allowed one building right. They're allowed to transfer one, but the originals also get that, have that opportunity to have that transfer of development rights for an addition, which would basically bring them up to, like, let's say if you have a 20-acre parcel, they want to split it in half, they've got one building right and then one building right if it's the plus one, if I'm reading it correctly. Can they also transfer a development right onto that original parcel as well? Or is that reserved only for those splits after 78? So, and the other third, and I think we're all in agreement on, is, are the quarter sections allowed 3 building rights? And I think based on my analysis earlier, I think that you would agree, based on the 160 acres for the quarter section, then the +1 does apply to those quarter sections. Because it was recently discovered that the data on the building rights layer that we have can be altered by staff, it is determined the issues discussed above regarding building right assignments may be easily remedied through both the direction of the commission this evening and adjustments in administrative enforcement. The options would be to direct staff to submit a resolution proposal to section 3.07 reflecting any changes proposed by the Planning Commission regarding the issues discussed in items 1 through 3 above. Or our option 2 would be make no changes to the language of section 3.07. Staff will amend each parcel on a case-by-case basis to reflect the correct number of building rights per the direction of the commission. So with that, I'll open it up for any discussion. When I talk about the original, the big question that I've run into is, if it's those parcels that are less than 80 acres that are original versus the ones that are less than 80 acres that are secondary, or the ones that have been split off since 1978. How do I treat the building rights on those?
Done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, staff. With that, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. I hear what you got to say. My personal comments are, we're going against our original plan of how we want to cluster homes. Mm-hmm. We don't want homes scattered, one here, one there.
Right.
For rural fire, ambulance. And so I totally agree with the 160 acre gets the 3 splits. Mm-hmm. I have no desire to approve a 20 acre tract to have 2 splits.
Okay.
My personal discussion is just we want to cluster houses. That has been a topic of discussion. And we're adding a lot of building rights to small tracts. Mm-hmm. Not exactly the direction I think we want to go, right? It's a topic of discussion.
That clusters them, though.
What's that?
That clusters them, though.
Well, it sounds like you're wanting to add a lot of building rights.
Yeah.
Well, the way that I'm interpreting it is, and this is what I need the clarification on from you all, is were the parcels that were original as of 1978, those as when this policy went into effect, does the +1 rule apply to those that are less than 80 acres?
No.
Okay.
My interpretation of it, it was 160 acres.
Because
+1.
The reason I was saying that too is
the 80 acres got 1.
Right. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's what you're correct, but it's just that I've run into situations where illegal splits have
Yes.
undergone, and people have made adjustments, and it's throwing off our numbers of the building rights on these parcels.
Right.
And
I think we're adding a lot of building rights that we really don't mean to,
okay.
right?
Well,
That's kind of where this discussion started.
Yeah, it is. It is.
my question is what he just referred to, property line adjustments that have been made over the years that cause parcels of less than 80 acres. Does that mean a property line adjustment that made it 78.5?
Yeah, well,
Something bigger, I would still call that 80 acres.
Right.
well, right now, I think that what used to be interpreted, they said if it's within 10%.
Yeah.
I
An
think
80
that
acre
was the
tract
original.
Okay,
is that what we're going to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
An 80 acre tract is give or take 10%.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't understand why a 163 acre tract is getting another permit.
Okay. So it's okay, that clarifies that for me, because then that
I
way.
clarified that for you? Okay.
Okay. Now, the other one is, should all parcels less than 80 acres be allowed one development right transfer before requiring an ag deed restriction? Or should this only apply to those parcels created after 1978? In other words, I think you've just answered the question. I think you've just answered that, and that says no.
I mean, we all agree.
yeah.
We're making some rule changes after 1978.
So I guess my question is, Tim, how many people would that leave that got those rights before 1978? How many of them are still out there?
Well, the probably not very many. I said because they've either developed them. You've got quite a few that are in ag right now that have the quarter sections, entire quarter sections that have been under one ownership for like 50 years.
Right.
That have 3 building rights on them. They have not used any of their building rights.
Right.
And
Well, I guess the thing I'm thinking is, are we going to create a problem for you in differentiating between pre-1978 and post-1978?
no, I can pull that up, that layer on my GIS, and I can also refer back to my aerial photographs that have the originals and also the original parcels. So I've got a lot of resources to help me determine what the original parcel was. It's just I don't want to. I don't want to run into a situation where I had last year or a couple of years ago, I had somebody come in and they said they wanted to argue with me about the building rights because previous staff told them they had a certain number of building rights when really they didn't have that number of building rights. And that's where I was getting with the interpretation, previous staff interpreting it one way. I'm interpreting it the way I in my own opinion, that I think was the spirit and intent that you guys intended for that. But but I'm running into situations where people either have made adjustment to their lot lines or made illegal splits and that sort of thing that have thrown that property right layer, the building right layer off. From an enforcement standpoint, but I can go back now that I know that I can change those and I can go through those layers and amend those. I can go on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody calls me up and says, I want to build on here, can I do it? I'll double check it on, what we currently have versus what was existing as of 78, just make sure that there was no illegal splits. And I think that will solve a lot of that, because now that I know that I can change that layer, it's going to make it a lot easier, I think, from an enforcement standpoint. I just needed a clarification so that when I talk to the public, I'm being consistent with the spirit and intent of what you guys
Well, as
wanted.
tracts are getting broken up, there's no guarantee that the tract you're buying is going to have a building right.
Right.
And, the people need to make sure that if they're buying 30 acres off of an 80, whether or not they're getting the building right that went with the 80. They may not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There may be a building right on the 80, but that's not made part of the selling agreement.
Excuse me, they may come in for a building permit and Tim says,
Can't have it.
sorry.
Yeah.
There wasn't one available.
Right.
Yeah.
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 But at that point in time, then they go to the TDR thing and go buy one.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say, because the
That's
way,
going to open the door up for that.
well, and this is where my interpretation has always been that there's a balance, because the way that it's worded, you have those TDRs, the sending property has building rights in a floodplain, and you don't want to develop in the floodplain.
Right.
So, and there are certain requirements as far as soil requirements and things for the receiving property. So the receiving property of that TDR can't have certain class 1 or 2 soils in there, and there's all kinds of provisions. As long as they meet those provisions, are they still okay? Are you still okay with that transfer as long as they meet the provisions that were adopted as far as,
As long as they meet the provisions, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so
I can speak louder than that.
It's strictly a discussion, Anything else?
Tim, when this happens, when these changes as such happen, will you update the county commission?
oh yeah, and
To
what
this.
what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it the same way that I did with the comprehensive plan. I'll discuss different topics with you all. I'm making notes as I'm going along, and then I'll present these to you when we're all done. And is this what you wanted me to do, and this kind
Okay.
of thing? And then I'll present it. And if everything's okay, then I'll present it to the county commission.
But everything is going to go back to the 1978 ruling.
Right. I just wanted to make sure my
80-acre tract
interpretation
gets one, 160-acre tract
gets
it's got the 2 plus 1.
plus one.
They
yeah.
break the quarter into 2 80s.
Okay,
One's got 1, one's got 2. They don't both get 2.
right.
We all agree that
Yeah.
that's how we're.
That's the way I would read it.
And on those, what was brought up earlier about the plus or minus 10% within that 80 acres.
Yeah, original tract 80, does it get the plus 1?
What it
If it's
says,
original tract.
that's what it says.
Well, I'm asking, do we agree that
If it's within 10% of 80
But if it's just an
acres.
80, does it get the 1 plus 1?
Plus one, that's what I was saying. Yeah, 80 acres plus is what is how it's written now. So if it was right at 80 acres, they would get the
If the
plus
original
one.
tract was an 80,
Yeah.
he's going to get, that
Plus
person's
one.
going to get 2.
Yeah,
If it was original.
yes.
Okay. I think it was a good discussion. Anything else you want to throw in?
Do you want me to go ahead and, based on kind of what we did, do you want me to go ahead and make adjustments to, as far as the wording for, to reinforce what we just talked about?
Please.
Yeah, because then that way it won't be so cumbersome for future staff.
Make
Future
it as
Tims.
clear as possible.
Do you need a
Yes.
motion of any type or just
Just, you can, I
a
think
commission
we're,
recommendation?
yeah, just say, option 1, direct staff to submit a resolution, but I said that won't be until later on anyway,
So no official motion
no
needs made.
official motion this evening.
Okay.
Any other items of discussion?
We have, we won't have any hearing in May, but we will in June. We've got the potential project that's going to be coming in, and they'll be submitting something in mid-May for the June hearing. Can't get into a whole lot of details on it because they haven't submitted anything yet, but, it's not a wind farm, so don't.
That's good.
Tentative,
Sand pit.
what kind of a
anything,
tentative date are you looking at on that June meeting?
That's the 20.
We might be on vacation that week.
Yeah,
We might be on vacation.
start telling.
Yeah,
June 20th.
okay. Some of us might be on vacation.
Okay.
We got combines to run, maybe, right? Maybe,
Yeah, we'll still see.
maybe,
You should be.
That's a prime date, though.
yeah.
27th of June.
Oh, 27.
More likely,
Who knows?
The 27th of June is a meeting date?
Yeah, 4th.
See, we've been.
I may not be here that day.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one for us. So,
Okay.
So,
rain or shine, it'll be tough. Okay.
yeah, I kind of figure you guys, it would be tough to be here, but,
We'll zoom in.
yeah, there you.
We'll be zooming.
From the
Right out there in the field, you got.
We'll zoom in, right? I will entertain a motion for dismissal.
Mr. Chair, I move that we get out of here.
Second.
Is that a proper motion?
I don't
It's
know.
proper. It's been properly moved and seconded. We get out of here. I guess that's called adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're out of here.
We'd be out of here.
Turn the TV